Down syndrome, a genetic condition caused by the presence of an extra chromosome. It affects approximately 1 in 700 babies born worldwide. While it does present challenges, it's important to remember that Down syndrome doesn't define the wonderful individuals who have it. We will uncover stories of triumph, discuss the latest breakthroughs in research, and dispel myths surrounding this condition. We'll explore the importance of early intervention, the role of education, and the power of support networks in creating a fulfilling life for individuals with Down syndrome. Hello and welcome to Healthy Connections. I'm your host, Annetta Wilson. Healthy Connections is a show dedicated to exploring a wide variety of topics, from prenatal care to Alzheimer's disease. And we do so with a wide variety of perspectives, from the professionals that help treat the syndromes to everyday people like you and me who may have personal experience dealing with these topics on a first-hand basis. Stay tuned for Healthy Connections. Dr. Stacy McConkey, a pediatrician with Advent Health for Children Coordinated Care for Kids and medical director of the Lifespan program Smile with Stella Down Syndrome Clinic, is here to begin our discussion on Down syndrome. Dr. McConkey, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
What is Down syndrome? If you had to define it for someone who has never really heard an official definition.
So people with Down syndrome have an extra copy of the 21st chromosome. So we have 23 chromosomes that come in pairs, and kids and adults with Down syndrome have an extra copy of the 21st chromosome, which creates a lot of the medical issues that they have.
What are the unique medical issues that someone with Down syndrome would present?
So right after birth, our babies are screened very closely for things like congenital heart disease, because that's actually one of the first things that we find on kids. Around 40% of kids can have holes between the chambers of their hearts, which can lead to problems with circulation, eventually requiring cardiac repair or surgeries.
Okay.
After that, many of them struggle with things like feeding. So the babies have very low tone. Their muscle tone is very low, so they're what we would call a little bit floppy. Many of them have trouble feeding because they have a relatively large tongue in a small mouth. Sometimes there's issues with breathing. Sometimes there's issues with the hormones, like thyroid hormone can be low in babies with Down syndrome. So we do a lot of screening initially for some of these problems.
Okay. So when parents are told they have a child with Down syndrome or are going to have a child with Down syndrome, if you could talk to those parents, what would you say to them?
First of all, congratulations that you have a baby or you're going to have a baby, because I think that's the most important thing to focus on. Kids with Down syndrome can have a lot of medical challenge. I think the most important thing for families when they're looking at this is to gather their resources. And there is an amazing support group for families with Down syndrome. We know a lot about Down syndrome over the past 20 years. We've come a long way in terms of managing it. So it's definitely not something that is fatal for kids. And we have a lot of great ways to treat the kids so that they have we can have high expectations for our patients with Down syndrome.
What are you most excited about when you said things have changed over the last 2 decades? What excites you the most as a pediatrician?
I think for me, it's the improvements in both the quality of life and their length of life. In the early 1900s, 1910, the average lifespan of a child with Down syndrome was 9 years of age.
Wow.
Probably because we didn't know much about repairing their heart disease.
Okay.
As we got better with antibiotics, their lifespan increased in the 50s and 60s into the 20s, and now it's in up to age 60.
So what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about people who are born with Down syndrome?
I think many assume that they're not capable of doing everyday tasks,
Okay.
and that's really not true. I think for most people with Down syndrome, therapies, things like that can allow them to live a very happy, normal life. People with Down syndrome can hold jobs. People with Down syndrome can have relationships with people. Many people tell me, oh, Down syndrome kids are happy all the time. I can tell you, having sat in on a few blood draws and giving shots and things like that, they're not always happy.
Right.
They are excited about things, they're very joyful, they're very loving, but at the same time they can be very frustrated or angry, particularly when it comes to difficulties with communication, which is frequent for kids with Down syndrome.
Well, you talked about therapies. What kinds of therapies are available?
So we typically from birth start with physical therapy. So I mentioned before that babies with Down syndrome are a little bit floppy, or they have low tone.
Low muscle tone.
Low muscle tone. So we work with them a lot on strengthening them and getting them to do kind of things that you would expect a typical baby to do that might be more challenging. So a lot of my kids with Down syndrome don't walk up until about the age of 2. That's not unusual. Therapy can help with both gross motor skills, so that's crawling, walking, running. We also use occupational therapy, so that's more of we think about activities of daily living. So getting dressed, zipping zippers, using utensils, writing with crayons, any of those kind of activities are considered OT. Then we also anticipate that there's going to be problems with feeding and language. So feeding is the first thing we tackle because our babies have to grow.
Yes.
And we often spend a lot of time and energy getting them to grow. Once they figure out the eating piece, we work on language a little bit more intensely. So that's so kids can communicate what they want to say. Many of my Down syndrome patients understand everything that's coming at them. It's getting the words out that is a little bit more challenging.
And that, I would suspect, might lead to misconceptions.
Absolutely.
So what I'm hearing you say is people with Down syndrome can live normal, happy lives, deal with the same frustrations anybody else does. It's just a matter of being more sensitive and aware.
Absolutely.
Dr. McConkey, thank you for being part of that 20-year wave that's going to lead toward more awareness and sensitivity.
Thank you for having me.
We will be back with more. Don't go away. It all started with a small group of parents in 1991. Parents raising children with Down syndrome in a world that didn't believe these children were capable of much. But these parents knew differently, and they formed the Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida. Heather Barnes, Executive Director, is here to tell us more about this amazing organization.
Good
Heather,
morning.
thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So, what does the Down Syndrome Association do?
Our mission is pretty simple. We want to propel individuals with Down syndrome to their fullest potential. We do that through programs, resources, and if we need to, advocacy.
Advocacy, tell us about that piece.
There are times in our world when individuals with Down syndrome might not have access to the same supports or services that others do, and if that happens, we will lobby together and we'll advocate for their rights. One recent event that happened was when individuals with Down syndrome weren't eligible for the COVID vaccine. So we got on the horn, we lobbied, and they were added to that list.
Something that simple that most people wouldn't think about.
Exactly.
So one thing I found interesting about what you do, you break down the services you provide by age groups. What was the rationale behind that?
When families first find out they're going to have a child with Down syndrome, the type of support they need is really different than the type of support a family needs when they're entering the school system and they're trying to figure out how do I navigate this, schools and IEPs and all the different complications. It's very different than what adult parents have to deal with when they're trying to find what is their child going to do after high school. So our programs are really broken out by ages and stages of life, and we support families through all of them.
Now, you mentioned IEPs, which is individual educational programs. So parents have the right to say, my child needs some specific support that the other students in class might not need.
Absolutely.
Do most people know that they can even ask for that?
They don't, and we really try to help our families understand that. We do a monthly webinar in conjunction with another organization in town, and we teach a lot about IEP services, and those are recorded so families can go back and watch them all the time.
What other resources do you provide?
We have a ton of resources. We provide all sorts of trainings and programs for our participants. We offer summer camps. We do lots of fitness activities like karate, and we're doing tennis right now because the weather's nice. We have social support groups. We do art class. We do meetups in the community. And then we also have a lot of programs and supports for our parents. We educate our parents on navigating the legal system, IEP process. We help our parents of younger kiddos learn how to potty train their kiddos. So it kind of varies by where the families are at in their lives.
And what have you found to be the biggest misconception people have about individuals with Down syndrome?
I think there's two. One, you hear a lot, oh, individuals with Down syndrome are always happy. That is not true. I've seen many a tantrum.
I mean, who is?
I've seen many a tantrum in our house, and yes, our participants are normally even-tempered, but individuals with Down syndrome run the full gamut of emotions just like everybody else. They get mad, they get hangry, they get upset, they get heartbroken when their crush doesn't call them back. So, you know, we have to help our families navigate all of those situations, just like every other family.
And you mentioned about doing an event with another organization. What does collaboration look like with your group and other groups?
Yeah, we're a small nonprofit. We only have 2 full-time and 3 part-time staff, so we definitely can't do it all by ourselves. So we work with lots of groups in town. There's a really great organization called the Dreamplex, which hosts our karate camp for us. We work with Central Florida Community Arts, which you might have interviewed another time. They offer a theater program for us. So we work with lots of other providers because we want to be the experts in Down syndrome, but we're not necessarily the experts in tennis and karate. So
yes,
we work with lots of other groups. There's also other really great disability groups that we partner with. FNDs, who host our monthly webinar, Family Network on Disabilities. So they're a state organization that offers all sorts of parent training, and they're the ones that do the IP seminars. So we have lots of collaborations.
And tell us about the big event you do every fall.
So October's National Down Syndrome Awareness Month. So every October we do a big community walk / meander through Lake Eola Park. We usually have about 2,000 people. We have all sorts of vendors. We have balloon artists and cotton candy and fun games and bounce houses. So it's a big community awareness event, and it's for a lot of our families, it's the first time that they realize that there's such a part of a bigger community than maybe the 1 or 2 folks that they've met locally.
If you're talking to someone who's seeing this for the first time and they've never had the conversation, perhaps they have met someone with Down syndrome, or they know a family who has a child with Down syndrome, what would you share with them on sensitivity?
I think for sure language can be very hurtful. You'll hear a lot of people refer to individuals with Down syndrome as a Downs kid, and that's really hurtful to parents. So if you know someone with a person with Down syndrome in their family, please refer to them as the person first language. So a person with Down syndrome, oh, your baby is so cute. Does she have Down syndrome? Not like you have a Downs baby. So language can be very hurtful.
And what would be your biggest success story? I'm sure you have many.
Success story. I think just this last year we had a really great collaboration with Advent Health Hospital, and Advent Health actually started the very first Down syndrome clinic here in Central Florida, and we're a partner of that clinic. We're funding the social worker position for that clinic because social work and navigating the healthcare process is really a struggle for our families. So we're really proud of that partnership with Advent Health.
Well, thank you for everything that you do, and especially creating awareness.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on today.
We will be back with more. Don't go away. Katherine Davey has practiced law, focusing on probate, guardianship, guardian advocacy, estate planning, and the drafting and implementing of special needs trusts for the physically, intellectually, and developmentally disabled. Now, when her youngest daughter was born with Down syndrome, her purpose in life became abundantly clear. Hi, Katherine.
It's so great to meet you, and it's so great to talk about my favorite topic, my May.
Tell me how your purpose changed when she was born.
I literally was on a walk listening to a podcast, and the person was talking about achieving, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, when you achieve purpose and you know what you're supposed to do to change the world. And I realized that I had a very unique opportunity because of what I did for a living and having a child with special needs, that I could educate families, I could educate lawyers, I could educate judges, and all sorts of people about all the things that became terrifying and frightening to them when they found out they were having a child with special needs or had a child with special needs. I could literally help them just relax.
What is the first thing that you want to educate people on when it comes to Down syndrome?
That it's not a death sentence, that it's not terrible, that it's amazing, that it comes with very special gifts that make her the most special child in the world, and that I wouldn't change her for anything in the world. I always say that when I was pregnant with her, I was scared and I cried and I was so worried, and I prayed for a miracle that she wouldn't have Down syndrome, but instead not knowing the whole time that she was the miracle.
How do you help other parents who may be in the place that you were?
Yeah, so I talked to them. I talked to them, what was the first thing they thought of when they realized their child had Down syndrome? It's a grief walk sometimes. There's dreams that die. There's things that you walk away from. And there's a breath you have to take to recognize and accept this new normal of having a child that will not be neurotypical, that will be different, but that will come with amazing gifts as well if you can just breathe and see those amazing gifts.
So what has May taught you?
Oh, so many things. She's taught me to slow down. She's taught me to breathe. She's taught me to appreciate every milestone she achieves, because the difference is I have two typical children. They make milestones and you don't notice, but May makes a milestone. And I always tell the story that you go through physical therapy and you go through speech therapy and you go through so many things. So when your typical children got out of the bed naked, or got out of the bath naked and ran away, you just fussed at them and got them back. I paused for just that moment and thanked the speech therapist and the physical therapist and all the work we had done to make it possible for my naked baby to run away from me.
So I love that. It sounds like it's more of an awareness issue.
Absolutely.
For other people.
Yeah.
When we were talking before we started taping, you said people first language. What does that mean?
So oftentimes people in the past will have referred to people with Down syndrome differently, right? They may say Down syndrome people or Down's children or like all sorts of derivations that are awful. It's not that way, right? You don't say cancer man or leukemia woman, so you'd never describe an individual with a disability that way either. So when I introduce or talk about May, I describe her as a little girl with blonde hair, purple glasses, big blue eyes. She is a Davey girl, God help us all, and she has Down syndrome. It is a part of who she is. It is not all of who she is.
It's not the totality of who she is. So your particular practice basically looks out for people with disabilities.
It absolutely does.
Tell us some of the things that you help families with.
So what I realized when I describe it in the Wonder Woman context, I would go as a parent to events as Diana Prince, right? And you'd hear things and you'd hear misinformation about what I did every day. So then I do the spin, the lightning, the crackle, and I was Wonder Woman, and I'm like...
I've got a visual.
Right?
Yes.
And so I'm like, wait a second, hold on. Like, so much of that's not true. Let me help you understand what's true and accurate, and let me educate you about the options and the alternatives and the choices you have, because it's not one size fits all, because you're different than me, and I'm different than you, and she's different than... Like, everybody's an individual, so there should be no presumptions. Just because May has Down syndrome, we shouldn't presume anything. She gets to be an individual just like everyone else does.
Do you find that the legal system helps?
It absolutely can. People are just overwhelmed and scared.
Okay.
So I began a program almost 10 years ago called Low Down on Law, right? Everything has to be a play on Down syndrome. So we do Low Down on Law twice a year. It's a program where we have attorneys and judges and all sorts of people that come and talk about the legal issues tied to having a child or a loved one with Down syndrome or special needs generally. We talk them through guardian advocacy and the alternatives. We talk to them about estate planning. We talk to them about Social Security benefits, like all the stuff that will just honestly scare them practically to death because
Yeah.
there's so much pressure and there's so much fear and there is so much misinformation. So I love when I present. I love making them laugh and relax, and you just see them go, oh,
Somebody
okay,
gets it.
it's not bad. Like,
Yeah.
I can get through this. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it'll be okay. It'll be better than okay. It'll be extraordinary.
So for people who are watching who may have someone in their family with Down syndrome, and this is the first time they've heard that they have protections and legal rights and can get help, what would be the first thing you tell them to do?
Go to my website. I have a ton of information. I literally give it away. I want to educate everyone. I want to empower everyone. I want to make sure they know there's lots and lots of choices, that it's not a one size fits all, and that all the information's up there and out there, and I've shared it with the judges and the clerks and everybody I possibly can. I literally walk around with flash drives full of information so that I can pass it out to people.
Well, thank you for what you do. And we want to thank May for spurring you off in a direction that has benefited so many people.
Thank you so much. I have to change the world for one little girl, but I have good big coattails and I'm happy to help everybody along the way.
Wonderful, wonderful mission. We will be back right after this. The key to any community that maintains healthy connections is understanding the beauty and the diversity of that community, and that includes people with Down syndrome. Hopefully today's show has helped you learn more and to accept for all of us to be healthy, we need to keep those connections going. I'm Annetta Wilson. Join us next time.